Hi folks, Just Travel here, ready to dive into some real talk today. I'm about to drop some truth bombs that might ruffle some feathers, especially here in my wife's home country. But if you've been following my videos, you know I don't shy away from topics I feel strongly about, and this one is no different. Lately, I've been interviewing expats and Filipinas, asking whether they feel a duty to support their parents and families. Many of you have been surprised, even shocked, by how determined Filipinos are to hand over whatever resources they can gather to their parents, even when it's your resources we're talking about. You've probably heard the saying, when you marry a Filipina, you marry her whole family too. That's not just a quaint notion about close family bonds. It also means that once you marry a Filipina, you become a legitimate source of income in their eyes. After all, you're part of the family now too, and if your wife is responsible for the family, then by extension, you are as well. To some of you, this might seem shady, greedy, and unfair, making you feel like you're just an ATM for her family, with a price tag attached to the relationship. But what you may not realize is that there's a deep cultural tradition at the root of this behavior, and it's incredibly tough to break. I'm talking about the Filipino tradition of utang na loob, which translates to indebtedness. It means Filipinos feel they owe their parents everything, turning children into lifelong providers for their families. This tradition can create immense pressure on children to produce for their families, leading to deception, conflict with spouses, immoral behavior, and sometimes worse. In extreme cases, it becomes a form of brainwashing from which there is no escape. But where did this tradition come from? Why does it persist? And how does it affect your relationship with your Filipina partner? Hold on tight as we dive right in. This is stuff you need to know. Imagine telling your kids every day as they leave for school, "Have a good day, honey, and remember, you owe me everything." Or when they grow up and get a promotion at work saying, "Great, more money for me now." In your world, any parent who would do this would seem like a greedy monster. But this is exactly the scenario that millions of Filipino children face every day. Not every Filipino family practices this tradition, but many economically disadvantaged ones do. Basically, the idea is that from the moment a child is born, they owe their parents for their very life and everything that has been done for them, including the clothes on their back and the food they've eaten since entering this world. The child is expected not only to respect and obey their parents, but also to fulfill their dreams and support them financially. Now, turning your kids into income producers isn't a new concept. It's been employed by different societies across the globe for millennia. In places with no social safety net, children become your retirement plan. So, to secure yourself financially, you just have as many kids as possible and send them out into the world to gather resources for you. They're expected to do the same with their kids, and the cycle continues forever. While it's true in a technical sense that a child owes its existence to its parents, does that mean a child should automatically be burdened by the need to acquire financial resources for their parents and siblings? To me, that sounds an awful lot like indentured servitude, or worse, familial slavery. What this means is that in their youth, a child isn't able to save for themselves or put aside money for their future family or kids, which almost guarantees they'll end up using their own children as little employees as they age. This system creates a vicious cycle of generational poverty and overpopulation because parents are encouraged to have even more children they can't afford to go to work for them. Many of you have dated a Filipina with a low-income job at a grocery store or mall and have seen how little money she brings home. You wonder how she can possibly make ends meet. Then you see her sending money to her folks or buying school supplies for her little brother, and it just seems insane that she feels responsible for all this when she's barely surviving herself. You try to explain that she never asked to be born and that it's her parents' responsibility to provide for the children they chose to create. She hears your words and might even nod in agreement, but you know her programming runs too deep, and you're not getting through to her. This conversation has been repeated countless times between Filipinas and their Western partners, with no resolution except conflict and a bunch of hurt feelings. It has to be one of the most contentious issues facing mixed couples. But there are even worse, more sinister effects of this tradition. The constant pressure put on children to procure money for the family sometimes results in Filipinas becoming scammers, extracting resources from the men who show interest in them. It's easy to scam someone online that you don't know and are never going to see, especially when you've got your mom constantly on your back about bills she can't pay. Even when they know where the money is coming from, some parents just look the other way, as long as the pipeline stays open. What a wonderful lesson to teach your kids. And speaking of exchanging morality for money, here's a nasty truth bomb that may be hard to wrap your head around, but I assure you, it's true. Every year, an untold number of young Filipinos, usually from the provinces, are encouraged by their parents to find employment in the big city as streetwalkers in places like Manila and Angeles City. I can't even begin to imagine sending my daughter out like that to make money for me. But it does happen, folks, more often than you think. How could a parent lay their head down at night, knowing that their daughter was out working the bars and sleeping with strangers in order to pay for their next case of beer? It almost leaves me speechless. Now, the obligation of utang is supposed to fall most heavily on the eldest child, but in reality, it somehow only falls on the eldest female child. Lucky us, right? We're supposed to not only provide for our parents, but also to help our siblings by putting them through school, getting them clothes, and whatever other financial burden arises. We're only free of our obligations once we marry and start popping out little employees of our own, so the cycle can start all over again. What a wonderful system. And here's where East meets West, where we find so much conflict and resentment between foreigners and Filipinas, all because of the tradition of utang. Now, for my Filipino audience who might not be aware, let me give you a brief description of the typical Western system, which is almost the exact opposite of ours. In the West, a smart couple waits until they're financially stable before having children. The children aren't seen as assets, they're regarded as expenditures. It's the parents' duty, since they were the ones who decided to have the child, to protect and nurture their offspring until at least the age of 18, when the child goes off to school or work. Nothing is expected of the child in return, except to stay out of trouble and become as happy, stable, and productive as possible. The parents will usually continue to support their children as long as they're able, even well into adulthood. The idea that children are responsible for their parents' expenses is unheard of. But this causes even more trouble between our two cultures, beyond just the issue of money, because a Filipina has had it drilled into her head since the day she was born, that her first duty, her primary loyalty, is to her family, not her husband. In the West, the opposite is true. Once you're married, your primary obligation is to your own wife and family, not your parents. This is hard enough to accept for a Western man who's always going to be less important than his wife's family, but it's the ugly truth. As I said, once a woman is married and starts her own family, the financial obligation to her parents is supposed to be removed. But as most foreigners can tell you, that's a bunch of BS, and the requests for money never end. There's always an emergency situation, someone's birthday, or a bill to be paid. Now, I've noticed 4 different reactions to this situation from you foreigners. First, there are those who either have plenty of money or just enjoy giving it to other people. You don't seem to mind at all the fact that you're asked to support your wife's family, and you guys are the least affected by this tradition. Then we have the guys who don't really like it, but they look at it as the cost of doing business. Just another expense associated with marrying a Filipina, the price of admission to the ride. They grudgingly send money every month, but it still doesn't cause that much friction in their relationship. Third, there are the men who really resent this practice. It rubs them the wrong way, and every time they're asked for money, they get angry, often ending in an argument between foreigner and Filipina. And fourth, we have the men who have decided no way, no how. They make it quite clear from the beginning that it's not their responsibility to hand over their hard-earned money to support extended family, and they have no intention of being used as a milking cow for a bunch of other people. People that often include lazy, good-for-nothing relatives. They might be very generous with their wives, but any attempt to extract money from them to pay for a second cousin's electric bill is going to be met with a glare of indignation, or worse. Now, I fully understand and sympathize with all 4 different reactions. I really do. If you're the generous type who's not bothered by providing for the whole family, then great. And until then, remember that understanding and communication are key in any relationship, especially when navigating the complexities of cultural differences. It's easy to get caught up in the emotions and traditions that we've been raised with, but it's crucial to step back and consider the perspective of your partner as well. If you're in a relationship where these issues are causing tension, don't shy away from discussing them openly. It might be uncomfortable, but it's the only way to reach a mutual understanding and agreement that respects both of your values. To all of you out there who are either navigating these challenges or thinking about entering a cross-cultural relationship, take the time to educate yourselves. Knowledge is power, and the more you know about each other's backgrounds, the better equipped you'll be to handle the bumps in the road. And don't forget, relationships are about partnership, compromise, and mutual respect. It's not about one culture dominating the other, but finding a way to blend the best of both worlds. So take care of yourselves, be kind to one another, and as always, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing. I'll see you next time with more insights, stories, and advice from my travels and experiences. Safe travels, everyone, and remember to enjoy the journey as much as the destination. Until next time, this is Just Travel, signing off.